You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Thank you for joining us. Website thisweekinamerica.us. Back with us on the program, one of our favorite guests, John Gobbell, the author of 7 World War II thrillers about the U.S. Navy in the Pacific, including A Call to Colors. We'll be talking about that on the program today. Also, books like The Neptune Strategy and When Duty Whispers Low. Edge of Valor is the 5th, the 5 standalone novels in the Todd Ingram series. John is a former naval officer who served as a weapons officer in a destroyer. Like I say, we're talking about A Call to Colors on today's program. John, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rick. It's really nice being here.
You are so prolific. I say 7 World War II thrillers. Have you written any more since we talked the last time?
Well, I'm trying. I've been good question. I'm encumbered by what I referred to as this campaign and Christmas and family and all that kind of stuff. And were you to ask do you write at a disciplined schedule, my answer would be sort of a ashamedly no. I wish, as the year moves on, I'll be able to get back to a schedule. I'm halfway through my 8th novel. It's a Todd Ingram novel. It's in 1968, and the title is Dead Man Launch. And so we're trying to, I'm still trying to keep involved.
Well, I am looking forward to having a chance to read that and talk with you about it. I was going to ask how Todd is doing. Todd Ingram, we've got the standalone series. You sort of become like accustomed to this guy as a reader, and you look for more. As someone who created him and writes about him, you can't get him out of your mind, can you? He keeps coming back with more storylines. It's like an old family member.
Well, it is. You're right. And I've enjoyed Todd, the characters we've created. And as you might have discovered, I brought back 1, 2, 3 characters out of the previous Todd Ingram novels into the current one, Edge of Valor. And that's fun to flesh them out and give them troubles and worries and all the rest of it. So it's just very enjoyable. It really is.
John Gobbell, our guest on the program. The new book we're talking about, A Call to Colors, on the program today. All of John's books available at Amazon, and Gobbell is Gobbell. His website is johnjgobbell.com. And you can link onto our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and go directly there and get that information. Before we talk about A Call to Colors, I'd read something, and you said it was interesting because there's this fascination with World War II military thrillers. Always has been. And even with movies, there's been a fascination with that. And you said you thought one of the reasons was you got bad guys in World War II, and these were really bad guys. And I was thinking about it, and that really sort of sets it apart, doesn't it? I mean, these are not sort of made-up bad guys. These are bad guys and well-documented in history as being bad guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are. In World War II, saying it was the only good war. Well, that's not really true. I mean, it was a terrible war, and good forces overcame the evil forces, and the evil forces characterized perhaps by Hitler and his SS and his Gestapo, etc., who really did terrible, terrible things in the European front. And in the Japanese side, Tojo, the premier at the time, and his Kempeitai, which was like the Gestapo, the Kempeitai of the Japanese thought police, and they did some terrible, terrible things too. So, if you set those up as good and evil, you can polarize a thing, which is an easy way to go. I learned in fiction, you learn as you go along in this, that you have a protagonist and of course an antagonist, and the story is much more lifelike if you bring protagonist closer to the antagonist in his wants and his needs and his beings and everything else. And of course, good triumphs over evil. And so that really becomes a more compelling story, I think, to have them closer together and what they're trying to do than just straight adversaries.
Right. The book we're talking... Yeah, it's fascinating how you go about doing that, and you've hit a home run again. The book is called A Call to Colors. That's available at Amazon, John's website, and what Kindle and Nook versions as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's available at any form you want out there. All the new forms of reading a book. Take advantage of them and read the book. You will enjoy it. A Call to Colors. It's a novel about one of the greatest naval conflicts in history. Talk about the setting for this book, and then we'll talk about your real stickler for historical detail. It's something, if we read in the book, we know that you've done your research on this. Talk about the setting for the book.
Yeah, it's a good question. I moved with my novels, my Todd Ingram novels, through major events in the Pacific Theater of World War II. Corregidor was the backdrop for the last lieutenant. Going on through Duty Whisper's Low was the shoot down of Japanese Admiral Isanoku Yamamoto. Neptune Strategy. Ingram is captured by a Japanese submarine. And now we come to an event that's really a major event in world history and naval history, and that's the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Leyte Gulf is a large gulf of Leyte Island, which is part of the Philippine island chain, which is where MacArthur landed in October of 1944 to begin the liberation of the Philippines. Leading up to it, it's just some amazing events. For example, a lot of people in the Allied side of it wanted to go to Formosa or to other areas, and MacArthur single-handedly convinced President Roosevelt. They met, pardon me, they met in Hawaii. Roosevelt, Nimitz, Leahy, who was Roosevelt's chief of staff, and MacArthur. MacArthur flew in from New Guinea, and the four of them had dinner and met in this beautiful house on the beach at Waikiki. And MacArthur convinced Roosevelt to authorize the attack on Leyte. Why? He said, now, Mr. President, you've been given the Democratic nomination to run for president again. He said, but ignoring the Philippine people will be a blot. He used that word, a blot, upon the reputation of the United States if you don't attempt to come back and try to free them from the Japanese empire. And Roosevelt bought into it, authorized it, and that's how we got into the Leyte Gulf operation. Leyte Gulf, Rick, as you might have heard, was really one of the largest amphibious operations of World War II. If I got my numbers right, I think the D-Day landings previously in June were 160,000 troops across the English Channel. MacArthur hated to be outdone by this little pipsqueak General David Eisenhower, who was his adjutant. Is just infuriated. So he had October the 22nd labeled as A-Day as compared to D-Day. A-Day, and he had 165,000 troops landing in Leyte Gulf. I mean, he's trying to upstage Eisenhower everywhere he went. So that aside, something like, was it 163 American combatant troops and over 163 combat troops and over 500 amphibious troops for the invasion of Leyte. It was just an enormous operation. So yeah, that's what they did. So they landed on Leyte Gulf, went ashore, and fought their way to the island right next door, which is Luzon, and of course that was the gateway to Manila and capturing the rest of the Philippines. That's what you. Go ahead.
Yeah, the book is called A Call to Colors, and key to the book is the USS Matthew, a destroyer, and Commander Mike Donovan. Talk about the role they play in the story.
Yeah, there was a well-known, there were four major battles within, they called the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which were confrontations between American surface ships or submarines, etc. In the third phase, called the Battle of Samar, which is another little island north of Leyte, the Japanese were able to get through the San Bernardino Strait and bring a major force of 35 combatant ships consisting of battleships, destroyers, cruisers, and they successfully came down the east side of Leyte and were ready, poised to enter into the Gulf, except for a small carrier group of 6 light carriers, 18-knot capability, guarded by 6 destroyers. And in reality, they ordered the 6 destroyers to line up between the carrier group, which were really vulnerable to the Japanese battleships coming down, and to attack them with a torpedo attack. I mean, it was a death charge. It really was. And what's always amazed me is when I read about this, the admiral in the carrier group said, "Execute William," which is the code word was to commence torpedo attack. And these guys, they turned and charged at the Japanese force at full speed, making smoke, and charged with a torpedo attack, really seemingly not caring about their own safety. I mean, they just did it because they knew they had to protect the carriers. It was an astounding act of bravery, and Jim Hornfisher, in his book, Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailors, demonstrated their bravery so amazing, as did Herman Wouk in one of his books, I think it was Winds of War that he wrote about the tin cans. His point of view was more from the aerial point, where the Navy pilots did an outstanding job of strafing the ships. Even they ran out of ammunition, they would strafe the ships to draw their attention away from other planes were attacking. So it was just an amazing turn of events that day. And the thing that capped it off, Rick, maybe I'm going on too far,
it's a fascinating story, and I want people to understand exactly what we're talking about here, because it's an excellent book. So please explain.
Thank you. So in this third phase, the Japanese fought their way down. Their ships were getting damaged. The Yamato was one of them, had some damage. 2 cruisers were sunk. But they were battling their way down to the entrance to Leyte Gulf, and they were just about there when inexplicably the Japanese Admiral Kurita said, "We've got to turn around." And he withdrew from the action, even though he could have, with great ease, attacked the American amphibs inside Leyte Gulf and done some terrible damage. Instead, he turned around and withdrew. And I give a reason in there. It's my own conjecture, but what the heck? This is fiction, so I tried it. In fiction, especially as I've grown older and learned about this, I've tried to give the Japanese some character. To me, it's always seemed that in the movies that you see, in the books, the Japanese are stiff, wooden people. You don't know much about them.
And sort of interchangeable, too.
Yeah, and so when you have a chance to see this one fellow, Admiral Kurita, who is a real light fellow, and his aide, who is Admiral Yasuro Noyama, who is fictitious and is my point of view character on the bridge of these ships, you get to see it from his side. As it turned out, in reality, the night before, Kurita got underway with his force from Linga Roads, which is off Singapore. He'd had dinner at Raffles the night before and contracted dysentery. So as they got into the Philippine archipelago, the Sibian Sea, and to the Kurita was horribly, he was tired and everything else. He was out of energy and all this stuff. And he had, the runs, if I can say it that way.
Yes.
Just terrible. And they put a cot for him up in the bridge and this type of thing. So that may or may not have been one of the reasons that Kurita was so horribly tired that he just finally gave up himself and said, "We got to get out of here." His reasons were good. He wanted to save his force. You could see his ships being mangled and damaged. It was really the end of the Japanese Navy at that particular battle. All the rest of the carriers and all the rest of the ships of any importance have been damaged or sunk in previous battles. So he was trying to save what he had and escape through the San Bernardino Straits and out. His reputation suffered greatly in Japan. He did bring some of his ships out. I think there were 22 out of the 35, but it was a terrible defeat for him. And just unaccountably, those 6 destroyers and those 6 aircraft carriers with their airplanes and the airplanes from other aircraft carriers strafed and butchered the Japanese ships so horribly that they did turn around. So that was the main part of the Battle of Leyte Gulf. They had several other forces. I'll just go into a couple of other aspects of it, Rick. They had a force from the north that came down, and it was one of their last major attack carriers, and 2 others, and a battleship as a cruiser. And they were there as a diversion to draw off Halsey's forces to the north, so there would be no protection for the Leyte Gulf contingent. And it worked. Halsey went north after them. He sunk their ships, etc., but it left the ships, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, wide open for attack. And so all the messages that went on back and forth, the derision, and it truly was a good example of a fog of war. The fog of war that Halsey went north, left the San Bernardino Strait north unguarded, where the Japanese escaped, and the rest of the things that could have happened down south. It's amazing the fact that Kurita withdrew. It just, you look into all this and you go, wow, this is not the way it was supposed to have been. And I think, leaders will tell you, military leaders, that, you can plan and plan and plan a military event, but within the first 15 minutes, you bet on the fact that things will start going wrong, and they always do. And so how they react to the contingency is something new.
It's an excellent book. It's a real thriller. It's called A Call to Colors. It's available all across the country. Information at Amazon, available as well in Kindle and Nook. Also at John's website. That's John J. Gobbell, Gobbell, johnjgobbell.com. And go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can link on there as well. As always, time going by very quickly. We see Commander Mike Donovan. He's got like the Japanese he's fighting, and he's going to rely on like a U.S. counterpoint, a lieutenant commander, to help him. Except this lieutenant commander at one point said he wanted to kill this guy. So you got to read the book to find out there. But there's some like personal drama going on here as well. You know, it's interesting. So much of what you do, obviously, is geared to that World War II era. And I know you sort of lived through that. Talk about, in the last few minutes of the program, growing up in Long Beach, California, at a period of time when the country in that area was really wrapped up in the war effort. It was, and I think you said something about the tension. I could only imagine, because your father was involved in the war, your mother was part of the effort as well, the whole community is. What are your recollections of those early days and the tension of what you were going through as we were at war?
Well, there's just a number of things. My brother and I, older than I, we were surrounded by good family and protected and safe. The only time I felt threatened, and I was just an 8-year-old at the time, was in 1944 at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, when the Japanese came out with their first kamikaze attacks. And these were real, unexpected. They had done single events of diving on ships before, but this was the first time the Japanese had brought out their suicide planes en masse as a concentrated force. And they began damaging ships at a horrible rate. They couldn't believe it. So this somehow came back to the States and everything else. And I remember my mom reading the paper one day about what was going on. And she kind of looked at me nervously and says, "We're going to be okay." But she didn't like what she was seeing. And my dad was overseas at the time. And so she was worried, as obviously many moms and sweethearts were. So, yeah, that kind of filled it over to me. Things these days that you see now, I can remember learning that they told us never pick up something on the sidewalk. It could be a little bomb. If you see a pencil laying on the sidewalk, or somebody gives you some bubble gum, thing like that, don't touch it. Just throw it away or give it to somebody who can look at it for you. So to this day, I still think about that. I see things that are supposedly freebies. I look at this, something I find in the parking lot, and wait a minute, that might be a bomb. Watch out.
Yes. And now we've got to fear that for a whole new set of circumstances now when we need to stay away from that. It's always fascinating having you on the program. An excellent series of books, and all of the books are available at Amazon, at John's website. The new book we're talking about is A Call to Colors. The book is available at Amazon, all across the country at major bookstores, and of course at John's website, which is John J. Gobbell. That's Gobbell. I'll do that again. John J. Gobbell, Gobbell.com. Easier, just go to what's our website? thisweekinamerica.us. Click on the link there to go directly to John's website and get information on this book as well as the others. John, always a pleasure to have you with us on the program. Looking forward to hearing more about Todd Ingram in that series, and we'll stay in touch and have you back, and we'll talk about that book as well.
Well, thank you, Rick. Time flies too fast. I enjoyed talking to you, and I appreciate being on your show.
Thank you. It was always great to have you with us. Look forward to having you back. Once again, all the information on John's books available at his website, John J. Gobbell, Gobbell.com. And, of course, our website, thisweekinamerica.us.